Yeah, just give. So we are back with security analysis and portfolio management. I hope you've started studying the topic. You had a break on Tuesday, so you must have utilized that time. Any questions, anybody? So what were we discussing in the last class? Anji, we were discussing about the investment environment. We were talking about how we should go for an investment. What are the 5 steps to the investment process? I hope you remember, everybody. Anybody who was not there in the last class? So have you attended the recording, Sindhura? Oh, great. So any questions? Before I take it forward, I must also announce that tomorrow also we're going to have an FTFM class, and we would be continuing with security analysis tomorrow as well. So make sure that you're there in the class at 8:15 tomorrow evening as well. Good evening, Amrita. We're just starting the class, and I'm seeing you after a long time, I believe, in the class. You were there, I think, security analysis. I do not remember whether you were there or not. So now, starting with where we left in the last class. So I hope you're fine now. Great. So in the last class, we discussed about the investment process. I discussed with you that why security analysis is important and at what step it is important. We also discussed about the importance of portfolio creation, where I told you that, if we keep all our eggs in one basket, the risk is more. But if we diversify it, if we diversify our portfolio, we thereby reduce the risk. And I remember Dipali when she gave the example of the mutual funds advertisement which is coming on television these days, where the boy keeps his laddus at different places because he just wants to make sure that he ultimately gets some to eat. So similarly, we discussed about the concept of diversification when we discussed about portfolios in the last class. Now today we have to talk about a new concept which is used for risk management. That is, like, today the topic would start from risk management, and I think to some extent we would be covering risk management only today. We would be talking first about evaluation of or calculation of what is the amount of risk, and then we would be using one technique to manage the risk, right? So starting with risk management to some extent, as I said, the first and the most important thing is that how do we map that how much risk I'm exposed to. In different markets, we can utilize different barometers for measuring risk. In the equity segment, we can look at beta. Now, what is beta? Beta is okay. Now, if anybody is a student of mathematics or statistics, have you ever used beta? Do we have any student of statistics here or mathematics here? Okay. Hanji. So Sneha, what is beta? Very good. Ganesh, you can also tell me what is beta. Maths mein you use the concept of beta? With the help of beta, if you remember, yes, I'm looking for some responses here. Alpha, beta, theta, gamma is fine, but what is beta? With the help of beta, you measure the slope of the curve. with the help of beta in mathematics, you measure the slope of the curve, right? So the slope of the curve is determined by the interrelationship between two variables. I am right now talking only to the students of mathematics, so those who are not the students of mathematics, please don't feel that, oh, I do not know anything, I'll be explaining everything to you. See, the thing is that if I make a curve, just try and understand it this way. If I make a curve like this on this graph, no issues. Here, if I make a curve, now what is this curve showing me? This curve is showing me the interrelationship between x-axis and y-axis, isn't it? Supposing if I say that okay, if I look at it as a demand curve, so what we say that when the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases, right? Or when the quantity demanded increases, the price also increases. Yes. So now when we but this is a supply curve rather, not a demand curve. Demand curve should be upward sloping, because when the price increases, the quantity demanded decreases. When the price decreases, no, it should be like this. So what I'm trying to say over here is, let us look at the relationship between the two variables. Now if I make the slope of this curve like this, now that what does this mean? It means that the whatever is the variable on x-axis, that is having less elasticity as compared to the changes in the variable on y-axis, isn't it? Because when in the y-axis we are changing more, the percentage change in x-axis is lower. But if I make the curve like this, here we'll say that perhaps they are showing an equal relationship. When there is a change in y-axis variable, to some extent there is a similar change in x-axis. So this changes between the two, like delta. If I change is denoted in mathematics by a triangle called delta. So delta y upon delta x, if I write it like this, this can be seen as equal to 1, less than 1, more than 1. I hope I'm getting clear when I'm saying this. In this situation, it seems to be equal to 1. In the previous situation, it was more than 1. Right? Now, what do we want to say and how do we measure it? We measure it with the concept of beta in mathematics and in statistics. The same concept has been utilized in finance as well. How? We say beta shows the relationship between the change in the index vis-a-vis the change in the price of a particular security. For example, in the index, like we have in India National Stock Index, which is called Nifty, and we've got Mumbai Stock Index, which is measured by BSE Sensex. You must have heard about these two indexes. Now, Nifty is made up of 50 securities. There are 50 securities which have got their weightage in determining what is going to be the Nifty. And there are 30 securities which have their weightage in determining what is going to be the value of Sensex. Now, but there are thousands of securities which are there which are being dealt in, which are being traded in the stock markets. I hope the point is like this is getting clear to you. Now, what I want to say is that, can we measure the relationship of change in the price of an individual security vis-a-vis the change in Nifty? Can we measure that? Can we measure this? Because we've got data now, we've got computerized trading since 1991. It has been now almost 26 years, 25 years that we are dealing on a computerized stock exchange where we've got minute-to-minute data. We've got, everyday closing data. For 25 years, we have got a large amount of data. So by using that data, can we find out on an average, when the Sensex changes by 10%, what is the percentage change in the shares of Reliance Industries or ITC or for that matter, or Steel Authority or TCS or Tata Motors or whatever. Can we do that? Can we find out the average for the last 25 years here and last 25 years there? Now once we've got the average, we can definitely create this percentage change in Y divided by percentage change in X. Yes, we can do that. So this relationship between the two is called beta, but the formula of beta is not this. I am just giving you because we would be also talking about some other variables there. So beta shows you the relationship between the change in price of an individual security vis-a-vis the percentage change in the stock index. Is it fine? So with the help of beta, to some extent, yes, we can measure the risk. We can measure the risk that if a particular security is changing. Now what is risk? As I discussed with you in the last class as well, risk is the deviation from the expectation. Risk is the deviation from the expectation. Now first of all, by using this mathematics, at least I can create an expectation, right? And then based upon the last 25 years data, I can also measure the deviation. I can also measure the deviation because I've got a large data. So I can use maybe not 25 years of data because that will be too large. I can use a data of 2 years or 4 years or 5 years because that will be more relevant, because with time changes, the relationships also change. So what we can do is that we can take a data and then we can measure the standard deviation of that data, right? And also find out the average. Is it fine with us? Are we able to understand what I'm trying to say? Yes. So therefore, beta, which is an indicator of change in stock price to change in the market index for the same period, helps us in mapping the amount of risk that we are carrying, right? Because it helps us in measuring the standard deviation. Then we have for the fixed income securities. Now, in the case of fixed income securities, now what are fixed income securities? What are fixed income securities? I discussed with you in the last class. Government securities, bonds, debentures, very good. Now, in case of these securities, are they sensitive to anything? Is there any risk? Is there any risk with fixed income securities? Sindhura says no. Dipali also says no. I am surprised, Dipali. This beta term was also used to some extent in dividend policy. Why I am surprised? No. There is less risk. Okay. Now, what is the risk? Let me explain. See, the thing is that, not like this. Now, if I tell you that I have to find out the market price of a bond, how will you find it out? The market value of a bond. You would be knowing this, that the face value of the bond may not be equal to the market value. This was a kind of a perception which I was carrying till the time even I passed out and started working. I used to think that because we have bought a bond, so there is no risk on the bond. So if I buy a bond in the market, then it should be equal to the face value. That is what I had a perception. But when I actually started working, I realized that the bonds are not available for the face value. Now why? Because when we talk about valuation of anything, I told you what we do in case of capital budgeting also we did. Cash flow divided by 1 plus R. Cash flow divided by 1 plus R. And this we do for n number of periods, right? You know this? The formula is you're aware about this formula? Now what happens, supposing there is a bond for a period of 5 years. Now during this period, don't you think that this R can change? this R can change. So if the R is going to change, then the market value is also going to change. If the R is going to change, the market value of the bond is also going to change. But yes, this R does not change very frequently, but still it can change, right? So the risk is lower. Now what will happen, as we have discussed in case of capital budgeting while we were doing the IRR calculations, I told you that if the required rate of return increases, then the market value decreases. Yeah, it is less volatile. I completely agree with you. So if the R increases, then the market value decreases. So that means, supposing I purchase a bond for ₹100, where the coupon rate of interest was 6%. Now the yield to maturity in the market, the YTM in the market has increased to 7%. In that situation, the bond will not be available for ₹100. It will be available for a price which is less or more than 100. Who will tell me? Come on, I'm waiting. Supposing which is more than 100, no. Supposing I purchase a bond for ₹100 when the coupon rate of interest was ₹6. Now the yield to maturity has increased to 7%. I told you that when the interest rate increases, the market value decreases. Right, Dipali? So when the interest rate increases, the market value decreases. That means here the interest rate has increased from 6 to 7%. The market value should come down. It should come down. It should fall. Right? So this is what is, this is where this concept comes. What we do in order to find out the market value of the bond, we discount. Now just try and understand, and you can try it at your own as well. Supposing there is a coupon rate of interest of ₹100, a bond is available for 5 years. The period for maturity is 5 years. And after 5 years, you would be getting ₹100 back. Now when you discount it at 6% only, so the value that you will get, value is equals to 6 divided by 1.06 plus 6 divided by 1.06 raised to power 2 plus 6 divided by 1.06 raised to power 3, and so on and so forth. For 4 years you will do, and in the 5th year what you will write, plus 106, because you would be getting your ₹100 back, divided by 1.06 raised to power 5. When you solve it out, what should be the value? The value would be ₹100 only. The value would be ₹100 only. You can do this calculation for yourself. Okay? The value would be ₹100 only if you are getting the 6% interest for a period of 5 years, and after 5 years you're getting ₹100 back. Then the market value should be 100 only, because you're discounting it at 6% only. You're discounting it at that rate of interest what you're getting. But when you change the denominator, when you change it to 7, then what will happen? Then this value will decrease from 100 to less than 100. Is the point getting clear? Right? So now so you say that if discount rate differs from start to end. Of course, yes, discount rate does differ from starting to end. Okay. So when the discount rate will go down, then the bond value will increase. When the discount rate will go up, then the bond value will increase. Now supposing I do not want this, because I have purchased a security where I do not want any kind of a risk. do we have any method? Do we have any method so that this change in interest rates does not impact my returns? The answer is yes, because we're talking about risk management. The risk is that my returns may get influenced. That's my risk. That's my risk. So in case of fixed income securities, the risk is the sensitivity of bond prices to interest rate shocks. Right? The sensitivity of bond prices, because the price of the bond will differ if I'm not holding a bond till maturity period. See, this risk does not make any difference to me. If I'm holding the bond to maturity, I have invested at 6%. After 5 years, I will get my 100 rupees back. I am having no risk. But I have a risk if I decide to sell this bond in between this period of 5 years. You're getting my point? You're getting my point? Till that time, I am keeping it till maturity, I have no risk. But if I do not want to keep it till maturity, in that situation, I am exposed to a risk. Fine with us? So, today, what I am going to discuss with you, how am I going to find out a method by which I can eliminate this sensitivity. I can eliminate this risk. ठीक है जी? Is the point getting clear? So the two situations are clear to us. But before I go to any of the two situations, let me first understand that what is my value at risk. What is my value at risk का मतलब होता है that in case I look at the extremist possible situation, how much can I lose? Because I will do risk management only if there is a situation where I am exposed to a kind of risk which I am not ready to take. You're getting my point? I would like to first know that what is the value that is at risk. And if that value is comparatively very, very high, then I should go for risk management. Or if it is beyond my risk taking capacity, then I should go for risk management, isn't it? So let us first find out the value at risk. In order to find out the value at risk, the basic statistical concept is to first know what is standard deviation, what is volatility. Because as I discussed with you earlier also, that risk is measured with the concept of standard deviation. Right? Right? Do you remember? I've already discussed with you that risk is to be measured with the help of standard deviation. So you know what is standard deviation by now? Everybody knows? What is standard deviation? Okay, now I should ask you, what is standard deviation? It's a class 10 question. What is standard deviation? Come on, try it out. What is standard deviation? Deviation from mean. Perfect. Thank you. So, I want to know that what is my deviation from mean. I have got last 25 years data. But out of that 25 years data, I have calculated mean. But in how many situations have we deviated from the mean? I am saying that on an average, this particular security on an intraday basis deviates in the range of say 2 to 3%. But then 2 to 3%, or on an average we say it deviates by 2%. Fine. But in how many situations has it deviated to the extent of 5% or 6%? Right? Average is something which we have got. But there might have been some extreme situations, 1 day, 5 days, 2 days, 3 days, when there was a deviation more than 2% or less than 2%. We want to understand that because my risk is there. My risk is there. So I understand the concept of standard deviation and volatility. Then with the help of standard deviation, average, the mean and the volatility, I create the normal distribution curve which tells me about probability distribution. I've discussed this concept also with you earlier. Normal distribution means that if I have got, okay, now let me create the curve again just to give you a revision. What I'm trying to say is that supposing I have got last 25 years Mumbai Stock Exchange data, and in that stock exchange data I found that there is one security where, you know, the average return has been, the average volatility has been 2%. Okay. Now this has been there in last 25 years. I can say that for I can say 10,000 days, the deviation has been around 2% only. But then there have been situations when the security, when the volatility has been 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%, or maybe 7%. Right? On the other hand, there might be certain situations where the deviations would have been 1%, 0%, -1%, -2%, etc., etc., etc. So I can create this kind of a curve. And as we have more and more data, the shape of this curve becomes like a bell. It's called a bell-shaped curve. Right? Right? Are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? Okay. So now, because it has created like a bell-shaped curve, this is called a normal distribution. If the shape would have been a little like this, you know, it can be like this as well. This again, I've created a normal distribution only. It can be like this as well, right? So then it will be called a skewed distribution. But right now, because we are talking about financial markets, in the financial market, because we've got a lot of data, most of the curves would be a normal distribution curve, right? So, because when we have large number of data, generally we come very close to the mean. Statisticians have worked on the normal distribution curve, and based upon their mathematical concepts, they have said that in a normal distribution curve, if the standard, there's a standard, and they've divided this curve into 3 parts. A normal distribution curve has been divided into 3 parts on the left hand side and 3 parts on the right hand side. And they say that if I take the value of z to be equal to 1.65, I am able to cover almost 95% of this curve. I am able to cover 95% of this curve. It says that if I take the value to be 1.65, my level of confidence becomes 95%. That means I have covered 95% of this curve. If I take the value of z, not the standard deviation, this is wrong. If I take the value of z to be 2, I cover 97.75%. So they have given a z table. And in that z table, they have given the value of z and given the level of confidence against that. Okay? Okay? What we do, while we have to find out the value at risk, this z table is fixed, right? So, and it's like similar to your present value tables, etc. You've got a z table as well, which is available in the books of statistics. So in our case, we do not refer to that table again and again, because we generally try to look at 95% confidence or 99% confidence or 99.99% confidence level. So generally our calculation, so because we just want 3 levels, so we know the value of z which we have to apply. 1.65 or 2.33 or there's another one I'm not able to recall right now. So we have kind of, you know, got satisfaction with these 3 levels, and therefore we do not have to look at the z table again and again. So now what we are trying to do, why am I telling you these concepts? Why? Because I was telling you about value at risk. So what is value at risk and what is the idea behind value at risk? Value at risk means that in case of the worst case scenario, if I have to disinvest on a particular day which is an extreme day, where the volatility is to an extent of 7%, what is going to be my loss? if we come to this level, which is extremely, which is very very rare, which does not happen in on an average, but which happens in an extreme case situation, what is going to be the maximum amount of volatility, and because of this maximum amount of volatility, what is going to be my maximum loss? Yeah, it can be anything. It can be anything, right? Example, Satyam can be there. There are many other situations. Stock index, we've got various companies where, we have got this kind of a volatility. So we want to know what is going to be my worst case scenario. I think Satyam was an exceptional case, not a worst case, because nobody was aware about it. So, but what happens, now let me take Satyam's example only. So when we talk about Satyam, we say that because of the, certain accounting systems, Satyam came to the limelight, and we came to know that there was a fraud kind of a situation, and this led to a very sharp fall in the Satyam share. That is an exceptional situation. But because of that fall in Satyam shares, the market also reacted in an abnormal manner, isn't it? All the shares in the IT sector, they fell more than average, isn't it? On that particular day, all the shares in the IT sector might have fell beyond, above in an abnormal manner. So I'm not talking right now about the Satyam scenario. I am talking about that scenario where because of any reason, there is an abnormal increase or an abnormal decrease in the price of a particular security. You're getting my point? Right? Which is once in a lifetime kind of a situation, or 5 times in the lifetime, or 10 times in the lifetime kind of a situation. Is it getting clear? So, and if on that particular day I have to disinvest because of any reason, I may be requiring money, there might be a situation where I have to come out of that particular investment. In that situation, what is the maximum loss that I will bear? Is the situation getting clear to you? So for that, I use the concept of value at risk. And we can use it rather, what I generally suggest is we can use it in our day-to-day life as well. We can use it in the day-to-day life as well with respect to anything. Because many a times, whenever we are surrounded by a negativity. Now, this is something which I have spoken with various people. I've read various articles in the newspapers also. When we talk about a positive attitude, what we say that because of any reason, if we are surrounded by a negativity, what we should do is, we should think about, okay, worst come worst, what is going to happen? That's what we do. What is negativity? It comes from the level of risk. So, we should think as to worst come worst, what is the loss that can happen? That is what we are doing here. We are trying to find out that in the worst situation, based upon past experiences, what is going to be the maximum amount of loss? Because if I know this, I would be able to utilize the risk management systems and procedures. Right? There are people who say heavens are not going to fall. Okay, heavens are not going to fall, but what is going to fall, just let me know. You're getting my point? So I need to actually find out that what can be the maximum loss in the worst situation. So what we do, we use three different components over here. First is the time period, because for what is the duration that I'm talking about, because that's very important. We have to look at that this volatility, this risk that I'm measuring is for short term or for long term or for medium term. So what is the time period? Second is, what is the confidence level? At what level of confidence I'm saying that my risk will not go beyond this. Okay? And if we have got the time and if we have got the confidence level, then we can find out what is going to be the maximum loss or the loss percentage. Okay? The question that I have to answer is, what is the most I can, with a 95% or a 99% confidence level, expect to lose in dollars over a period of next 1 month, 1 year, 6 months, 5 years, whatever. Okay, you got my point? What is the maximum that I can lose during this period? This confidence level is not hypothetical. I would be coming to the real numbers. It is not hypothetical. Confidence level is based upon standard deviation. Right? What we will do, we will multiply the standard deviation with the value of z. I'll be coming to that. So this value of risk, again I'm going to the definition, is an estimate of maximum potential loss on a given position for a given holding period at a given level of confidence. Right? Right? So there are 3 methods of computing it. I think I'm going very slow, but I will try to take it very fast now. There are 3 methods of computing it. Before I take it forward, I must tell you that this concept has never been asked in the ICSI examination. I am discussing this concept with you because I feel that discussing risk management without value at risk, because if I do not know how much risk I have and I start managing it, I think we are fooling ourselves. So we must first understand what is value at risk, and then we should move to risk management. Second thing is, it's a very, very beautiful concept which is not only relevant for a financial manager but also for any individual. And that is why I discussed this concept with all of you. So far as ICSI is concerned, the third reason why I'm discussing with you is, earlier I had never used to discuss this concept with my students in ICSI. But when I saw the questions being asked from the topics which are not there in the syllabus, I felt that this is also a topic which is very relevant and must be discussed, and that is the third reason that I am discussing this topic with you. So in certain situations, if I go very fast with the methods, etc., the reason would be that this topic has never been asked in your examination. So I may concentrate on one of the methods and then move very fast with the other methods. So when I'm talking about measuring this value at risk, we've got 3 methods. In the first method, which is called a historical method, we reorganize the historical data in the order from worst to best. We reorganize the data in the order from worst to best. Like if I show you this this graph, supposing we have taken Nasdaq. Nasdaq is an index. Now we are saying that in case of Nasdaq, the average fluctuation has been in the range of 1%, because that has got the maximum level. Out of 1387 days, for more than 250 days, there has been a fluctuation in the range of 1% or maybe 0%. It's around 0%. But we are trying to, now what we have done, we have placed the number of days and the number of percentages from worst to best. So in around 1 or 2 days, there has this index has fallen by around 8%. In around 10 trading days, there has been a decline in the index at the rate of 7%. And then what we have done, we have created a kind of a table where we are moving from worst to best. Right? We are moving from worst to best, and we are trying to find out that this worst has been there for how many days, in how many situations. Okay? But this we are doing it at the real data. We are not taking any standard deviation. We are going by the real data. We've created a histogram, and the red bars are showing you the daily losses in the range of 4% to 8%. Now we have tried to understand that, okay, if I look at the total number of days, number of days is 1387. If I cover 95% of days in this, right? So in that situation, how much of this particular graph is getting covered? If it is like this, which is getting covered. So if I take this here, then if this covers 95% of the number of days, that means that by 95% confidence level, I'm saying that the worst cannot be beyond 8%. You're getting my point? The worst, because I am not interested in knowing the green bars here. Why? Because that does not show me any risk. The worst has not happened in more than in case the worst happens, because this has happened in some of the days, in that situation my loss will not be more than 8%. You're getting my point? Is the point getting clear? Okay. So the statisticians were not satisfied with this kind of a curve, so they made a statistical model of this. And they said that what is the point that you are calculating the number of days and then you are calculating the maximum loss that can happen? It is getting very confusing. Why can't we average out things, and why can't we use the statistics for that? So they said that okay, if we have got a large size data, then the shape of this curve is going to be like a bell shape. Wherever we've got a large size data, then the shape of this curve is going to be bell shaped. When you have a bell shaped curve, they divided this bell shaped curve and created the value of z, right? They created the value of z, and they said that okay, if you want to say 95%, then the value of z would be equal to 1.65, right? So there you don't have to actually calculate the number of days, etc., etc. You simply multiply the standard deviation with 1.65, and you would be able to find out that what is 95% of this curve. You're getting my point? So it is simply that model, the historical return model, which has been converted into a statistical technique using the Z table, which is called the delta normal method of calculating the value at risk. Got my point? So they made the calculation easier by using this concept. Okay, and here, because in case you want to know 99% confidence level, you can do it on a click of a button. In case you want to do it at 97%, because you have got the Z table, so you can calculate it at any value of Z at any confidence level. So the advantage of this normal curve is that we automatically know where the 5% or where the 1% lie on the curve, right? Because we are concerned with that 5%. We are concerned with that 1%. So if we really want to know that at 95% confidence level, what could be my standard deviation? Here I am taking minus 1.65 and minus 2.33 because I'm not concerned with the positive side of the curve, because positive side of the curve will always give me a profit. I am concerned with the negative side of the curve. And you remember I divided the left hand side into 3 parts and the right hand side into 3 parts. I am not concerned with the right hand side 3 parts. I am concerned only with the left hand side 3 parts, and in the left hand side parts, if I say that the value of Z is minus 1.65 and I multiply it with the standard deviation, I can get that standard deviation which covers 95% of the curve. You're getting my point? You're getting my point? So now let me take an example here. If the standard deviation of Nasdaq is 2.64%, that we can calculate by using x minus x bar divided by n. So if the standard deviation of index is 2.64% and I want to know at 95% confidence level what can be the maximum loss, I will multiply this 2.64 with minus 1.65, which says that at 95% confidence level, your maximum volatility on the negative side can be equal to minus 4.36%. If I want to be confident to the extent of 99%, I will multiply standard deviation with 2.33. So it says that your maximum volatility would be in the range of 6.16%. You're getting my point? So you understood now, Ganesh? The confidence level is not hypothetical. Once we multiply it with standard deviation, we know how much portion of the curve we are able to cover. Okay? Now, when we discuss the concept of value at risk, I said we would be looking at 3 different aspects. One, the amount of loss. second the confidence level, and third over a period of time, right? So time was also an important parameter here. You remember? So now in case we have to incorporate time aspect also into it, so what we will do, we will keep the same formula at 95% confidence level minus 1.65 multiplied by standard deviation multiplied by the square root of time. Square root of time means that if I'm looking at, if I'm saying that I want to know, though I've got the data for 1364 days, but I'm not going to invest for 1364 days. I am keeping my investment objective, I am keeping my investment horizon for 20 days. Right? I want to know that because I want to know my risk for a period of a month. Okay? I've got a data for 1364 days. I want to know that how much risk I'm carrying during this month. I intend to know it, that maybe that after 1 month I will disinvest. So my formula would be minus 1.65 multiplied by square root, multiplied by standard deviation multiplied by square root of t, and t here is 20 days. So if the data with me is in days, then I will calculate the time in days only. If the data would be in years, then I'll calculate time in years. If the data would be in month, then I'll be calculating the time in month. Right? Is it fine with us? Now, there's another method which is called back simulation method. I'm not discussing this method with you because again it is a method where we do a simulation. We try to measure the sensitivity for future. This method I'm not discussing with you because it is based upon a lot of calculations. So I just wanted to, as I said, introduce the concept to you. Now having introduced this concept, now I'm moving back to the topics which are asked in your examination. Okay? Can we move? Any questions on value at risk? Though I would be coming back to value at risk after 2 minutes. So seems to be that there are no questions. Now when I discuss with you the concept of security analysis, there would be two concepts which I would be testing again and again. The concept of variance and covariance. Now this is something which is very interesting. See, when I say, no, I'll go to the first screen. Okay. When I said that security Y, security X changes with the change in index, I'm trying to measure covariance, how they are varying together. You're getting my point? I am trying to measure covariance, how they are moving together. But if I simply want to know that how security X is changing, then I simply have to measure variance. You're getting my point? The difference between variance and covariance is getting clear? Is it getting clear? What is variance and what is covariance? Hello? It's getting clear. Now, in the concept of security analysis, both these concepts are important. Variance as well as covariance. Now, why these two concepts are different and why they are important? Basically, just try to understand that when I am talking about covariance, I must understand the correlation between two things. When I'm saying that two things, they move together or may move opposite, and if I'm trying to measure how they are varying with each other, then the concept of correlation also becomes important. Now, correlation, now before I take it further, I think I should give you the formula because you would get confused otherwise. How do we measure covariance? Covariance is measured by, let me first ask you, you know what is variance? Covariance पे तो बाद में आएंगे. What is variance? I told you in one of the classes earlier, what is variance? किसी को याद है? किसी को भी याद नहीं है व्हाट इज वेरिएंस? चलिए मैं बताती हूँ, सिंपल है, बहुत सिंपल है. वेरिएंस मीन्स, नाउ दिस इज माई मीन, 2% is my mean in this particular situation. What is variance? Variance is how much can we deviate from the mean. You will say that, ma'am, that is standard deviation. Variance is just the square of standard deviation. Standard deviation shows you one side of the curve. Variance shows you both the sides of the curve. That is why it is square of standard deviation. You're getting my point? Standard deviation is showing you one side of the curve. Variance is showing you both the sides of the curve. So that is why, what is variance? Variance is the square of standard deviation. Okay? Rather, what happens actually, we first calculate variance, then take the square root of that to find out standard deviation. ठीक है? हम पहले जनरली कभी भी हम कैलकुलेट करते हैं तो पहले वेरिएंस निकालते हैं, फिर उसका स्क्वायर रूट ले लेते हैं. सॉरी, वेरिएंस इज स्क्वायर ऑफ, नॉट स्क्वायर रूट ऑफ, यस, इज द स्क्वायर ऑफ स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन. तो हम क्या करते हैं, वेरिएंस निकाल के उसका स्क्वायर रूट ले लेते हैं तो हमें स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन मिल जाता है. दैट्स फाइन. नाउ माय क्वेश्चन इज कोवेरिएंस. इसको कैसे पता करें? आपने क्या कहा था, वेरिएंस निकालने के लिए क्या करना पड़ता है, x माइनस एक्स बार. यू रिमेंबर दैट? x माइनस एक्स बार, यू रिमेंबर दैट? x माइनस एक्स बार स्क्वायर. आई हैड गिवन यू दैट फॉर्मूला. सो कोवेरिएंस में हम क्या करेंगे, x माइनस एक्स बार मल्टीप्लाइड बाय y माइनस y bar. If I do this, I know how much they are co-varying together. इसका भी स्क्वायर कर दो और इसका भी स्क्वायर कर दो. ठीक है? I know how much they are varying together. But what happens is that when we have to compare different situations, at that point of time, we would like to know it in terms of percentage, not in terms of absolute numbers. Right? We want to know in terms of percentage. If I'm saying that these two securities, they are co-varying, by co-varying, the covariance of these two is 264 and the covariance of the other security is 315. Does not make any sense unless I know the standard deviation of the two and how much they're co-varying. So it becomes very difficult. So in order to find out the covariance in percentage terms, we calculate correlation. What is correlation? It is covariance in a percentage term कह लीजिए, और covariance in the range of -1 to 1. You getting my point now? So how do we calculate it? Correlation, correlation is equals to covariance divided by standard deviation of the first security multiplied by standard deviation of the second security. That is how we calculate correlation. So it is coming from covariance only. ठीक है? ठीक है? Sorry. Or we can say that covariance is equals to correlation multiplied by square root of variance A and variance B. Isn't it? ठीक है? उसी को क्रॉस मल्टीप्लाई करके रखते हैं. Now, once we've got the covariance, तो एक बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग कॉन्सेप्ट आ जाता है. ये यहाँ तक बात सबको समझ में आ गई है? even if you're not able to recall the formula, just try to understand the concept. Right? What I'm saying is that ये मैंने क्या कर दिया इसका? That supposing this is for security X. Similar can be another, there can be another graph for security Y. Okay? So we calculated standard deviation for this, we calculated standard deviation for this, and then we calculated the covariance of the two. Okay? Now, and then we calculated the correlation also. Now, once we find that there is a correlation of -1 between the two, it can also happen, no? Because the correlation can range in the between -1 to 1. So, assuming that this correlation between the two is -1, what does this mean? How do we interpret it? We say that when on a particular day, when security X increases from 2% to 4%, the security Y decreases from 2% to 4%. This is the interpretation of correlation. बात समझ में आ रही है? Correlation, if it is -1, what we want to say that on a particular day, if security X increases from 2% to 4%, security Y decreases from 2% to 4%. That is why the correlation is -1. Are you able to follow, or am I going too much into my imaginary world where I'm thinking that I'm able to reach you? I hope I'm not confusing you. Of course, it may affect, it may not affect. So by correlation, we try to understand that just try to understand, Ganesh. We are not talking about the effect of one security on another. They might be affected by different variables. Sorry, what I want to say is that I want to say the effect of one variable on two securities. So when in a particular day there is a particular situation in the capital market, how are the two securities moving because of any information in the market? Like we talked about Satyam. So when I say that there was a Satyam scam and it came to the market, so there might be IT securities which have gone down, but there might be manufacturing sector securities which might have gone up, because they might have felt that now people will lose faith on IT sector and then the manufacturing will grow up. Just try and understand this. This is a very beautiful concept which I would be using everywhere in risk management. That in every market there are people with diverse interests. A profit, when one makes a profit, the other makes a loss. I'll give you a very small example. Supposing it rains. It rains. So supposing it has rained, and so don't you think that it is a positive news for the agriculturalist? He feels that his crop is going to be benefited by rains, right? But it is a negative news for a person who's a dhobi, isn't it? Now for today, his business is getting spoiled. He's not able to wash his clothes. He's not able to put it out for drying purposes, and today's business is closed because there has been a rain. So in a market, you will always find people with different kinds of interests. Similarly, in the capital market also, because of one particular situation, again there can be a number of examples on this. Because of one particular situation, if one is making a loss, the other is making a profit. Right? Right or wrong? For example, like if I take the example of tea, if it is going to be extreme winter this year, there's going to be a good business of tea, but a bad business for cold drinks. So one will make a profit when other will make a loss, isn't it? So what we want to do is, we want to find out those securities which have got a negative correlation with each other. You got my point? So it is not that one is affecting the other. It is that one variable is affecting the two securities in different manner. Got my point now? Okay. So we try to find out the relationship between these two securities vis-a-vis certain changes in the market conditions. Okay. And as an investor, I want to invest 50% of my money here. Now I'm just talking this, giving this 50% is a very rough thing, right? I haven't done any analysis here, and maybe 50% here. So whether the temperature dips or does not dip, I have invested 50% of money in a tea company and 50% of my money in a cold drink company. If the temperature goes down, tea company will make good profit. If the temperature does not go down, the cold drink company will make better profit. So for that, I have to identify these two companies which have got a correlation of -1. Right? Either way, I want to reduce my risk. Perfect. So I have to find out those companies. Now, what I want to prove by saying all this story is that this X company might have a standard deviation of the range of 4% or 2%. इसका standard deviation 2% हो सकता है. Y company may have a standard deviation of 3%. But when we club them together their standard deviation may be only, will not be 5. It would be less than 5 depending upon their correlation. Because when this will go down, this will go up. When that will go down, this will go up. You're getting my point? When X is coming down, then Y is going up. When Y is coming down, X is going up. So together they do not go down by 5%. You're getting my point? Yes or no? You're getting my point. Thank God. So because I was trying my level best to give you this point, because this is what is the crux of risk management. If I understand this, I think I can put across the complete concept of risk management. So that means the variance of A plus B would be equal to variance of A plus variance of B plus covariance of A and B. Right? This covariance डालने से क्या होगा? The standard deviation will become lower, which I will tell you with the next example. So what is the importance of correlation over here? The importance of correlation is that let us assume that we've got two bonds, A and B, both of them are of par value, both of them are of 100 rupees each. And we give them equal weights in the portfolio. I've got 50% of money invested in A and 50% of money invested in B. Let the deviation in the interest rate in respect of bond A is 6. So the standard deviation of A is 6 and standard deviation of B is 9. The correlation between the two is 0.3. So when A deviates, B deviates, but it deviates only to the extent of 30% of A's deviation. Right? So the correlation between the two is just 30%. Let us assume that the holding period of the portfolio is 1 year. We have to find out the value at risk of the portfolio at 99.9% confidence level. So I'm coming back to value at risk. Okay. Now, in order to know what we have to find out, the value at risk not of an individual security. We have to find out the value at risk of the portfolio. So value at risk निकालने के लिए सबसे पहले मुझे क्या चाहिए? I need standard deviation. Yes or no? Value at risk का क्या formula था? Confidence, like the value of Z multiplied by standard deviation multiplied by square root of time. Right? तो मुझे standard deviation किसका चाहिए अब? अब मुझे portfolio का standard deviation चाहिए. Portfolio का standard deviation निकालने के लिए मुझे क्या करना पड़ेगा? मुझे पहले इस पोर्टफोलियो का कोवेरियंस निकालना पड़ेगा. कोवेरियंस निकालने के लिए what I have to do, because the formula says variance of A plus variance of B plus 2 covariance of A and B. So I will have to find out covariance. How do I find out covariance? Covariance is equals to correlation which has been given to me as 30% multiplied by square root of variance A and square root of variance B. So that means correlation is equals to 0.30, which has been given to me. Square root of variance A. Variance of A is 36, right? Because we have been given deviation. And variance is equals to square of the deviation. So variance of bond A is 36 and variance of bond B is 81. So अब इसका 36 multiplied by 81 का square root ले सकते हैं या फिर 6 multiplied by 9 कर सकते हैं, बात एक ही है. So 0.30 multiplied by 6 multiplied by 9 is equal to 16.2. This is covariance between A and B. Now I have to find out variance of A plus B. That is equals to variance of A plus variance of B plus covariance of A and B. So 36 plus 81 plus 2 multiplied by 16.2 is equals to 149.4. When I take a square root of 149.4, I find that the standard deviation of A plus B. So when I invest 50% in A and 50% of B, the standard deviation is coming as 12.22, which is less than 15. Right? Because they have got a 30% correlation with each other. Right? Now once I've got the standard deviation of A plus B, I have to simply find out the value at risk of the portfolio. At 99.9% confidence level, the value of Z is equals to 3. The value of Z is equals to 3. Right? So I have invested 100 rupees in bond A and 100 rupees in bond B. So my total investment is 200 rupees. I multiply it with 3, which is my confidence, my value of Z at a confidence level of 99.9%. If I wanted the confidence level of 95%, I would have multiplied it by 1.65, multiplied by the standard deviation of the portfolio, which is 12.22%. So that gives me that in case of extreme situation, at 99.9% confidence level, my maximum loss would be 73.32 rupees. It is not in terms of percentage because I have multiplied it with the value of investment. My maximum loss would be of rupees 73.32. 12.22 is standard deviation, right? We've already calculated this. Three is the value of Z. ये आपको मैंने बताया था, when you look at the confidence interval, there what you do, Z is equals to 1.65, then the confidence level is 95%. Here I have to calculate at confidence level of 99.9%. So the value of Z was equals to 3. I have taken it from the Z table. ठीक है अमृता? When to use square root of t? Very important. Here, because we're looking at the period of the portfolio as 1 year. Because we're looking at the period of portfolio as 1 year, so therefore we've not taken the square root of t here. Because here the period is 1 year. अब हमारे पास जो डेटा था वो भी 1 year का था, और जो हमारे पास पीरियड ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट होराइजन था वो भी 1 year का था. सो दैट इज व्हाई वी हैवंट टेकन एनी स्क्वायर रूट ऑफ टी. ठीक है? So these are the concepts which take time to build up. I am not, suppose it would have been 4. What 4? What would have been 4? Holding period 4 months, you're saying? Four years. Then we would have multiplied it with, yes, then we would have multiplied it by 2. Of course, yes. तो 4 years में उतना ही रिस्क आपका बढ़ गया ना, right? Perfect. You've understood it correctly. So what I'm trying to say over here is that these are the concepts which we would be using, then reusing, then reusing. So ये आपको एक बार basic clear होना चाहिए. Then when we practice it on a day-to-day basis, when we do security analysis, intensively we will be using these concepts only. Rather, for any kind of a risk management, I think we are at the base right now. For any kind of a risk management, these are the concepts which are going to work. These should be in the back of your mind, right? उसको हम apply किसी भी तरीके से कर सकते हैं. Even when we do derivatives, the entire concept is coming from risk only. So it's like a beautiful concept if it registers well, because I must practically tell you that I have been teaching these areas for I think 10 years now. But then slowly and steadily, when these concepts, when I was relating one to the other and the story started building up, I had a very beautiful feeling that, oh my God, it's such a wonderful concept. If you look at it in a macro perspective, it is so very beautiful that these theories and these concepts, they can really, solve a lot of our world problems. They've actually solved a lot of our investment problems. So what are the applications of value at risk? Value at risk helps us in giving you the maximum possible loss in a given trading or a portfolio position. And once you have the maximum possible loss, you can set up the maximum limit for measuring the performance of your treasury operations. You can say that my value at risk was, say, X amount. If my loss has been more than X, that means that the treasury department needs its performance needs to be checked, right? So you can fix up a limit for your treasury losses by using the concept of value at risk. You can even fix up the limit of the individual by using the concept of value at risk. And it also helps the management to decide quickly on the trading strategies, because the maximum amount of loss that you can suffer in a given situation. So you can very quickly decide as to when to liquidate, when not to liquidate, when to invest, when to reinvest, when to disinvest. So a lot of decisions can be taken with the help of the concept of value at risk. But this concept of value at risk is not a very, because it is based upon historical data. So therefore, we have to test it again and again. We have to test it again. We cannot say that, okay, this is one model which has been created and now we have to follow it forever. No. We have to test it and compare the actual losses with the losses which have been projected by the model. And in case we find that the actual losses as compared to the losses which have been projected by the model has been in the range of, depending upon the number of trading that you do on an yearly basis, but if the exceptions have been on a particular year, or we can say in the range of 0 to 4% also, if I'd say, this is what has been given by the Basel Committee. Basel Committee is constituted for measuring the risks in the banking sector. So Basel Committee says that if the exceptions of your value at risk model is in the range of 0 to 4, that means that your model is fine, because we are talking about we are using historical data for measuring the current losses. So there can be exceptions, and if the exceptions are in the range of 0 to 4, it is in the green zone. But if it is more than 4, that if the exceptions are in the range of 5 to 9 times, in that situation your model is in yellow zone. That means that your model needs some improvements. But if the exceptions are more than 10, in that situation there are some defects in your model, and you should stop using this model for your value at risk estimation, right? Now I am coming to the bond market, but I feel that we have had a good discussion on one concept. So let us keep this bond market for the next class, right? Because it's a new thing altogether. I have to discuss the complete concept, though I've established the foundation for bond market as well today, but I think I would be taking it in the class tomorrow. We have got a class tomorrow also at 8:15 p.m. Okay. right? Exceptions means occurrence of variance. No. Exception means that I had estimated the value at risk, say for ₹100, that my maximum loss at 99%, like we did in case of bonds, my maximum loss for 1 year, in this, by investing in these two bonds would not be more than 79 rupees, 79.92 or something that came. Now, if my maximum loss is more than 79.92, that's an exception. You got my point? Exception is that I have fixed, this was my maximum limit. अगर मेरा लॉस उससे ज्यादा होता है, दैट मीन्स कि मॉडल में कुछ गड़बड़ थी. अब एक बार हो गया कोई बात नहीं, बिकॉज हिस्ट्री डज नॉट रिपीट इटसेल्फ एवरी टाइम. 2 बार हो गया कोई बात नहीं, 3 बार हो गया कोई बात नहीं, 4 बार हो गया कोई बात नहीं. बट जब 4 बार से ज्यादा हो रहा है, देन वी से दैट नो, वी नीड टू चेक द मॉडल. देयर नीड्स टू बी सम इम्प्रूवमेंट इन द मॉडल. फ्रॉम 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 टाइम्स वी रियलाइज recurrence of risk nahi, recurrence of loss which is more than my value at risk. Right? जिसको हम कहते हैं, जैसे in terms of routine language हम कहते हैं कि अगर किसी से एक बार गलती होती है तो हम उसको कहते हैं कि that is a mistake. अगर 2 बार गलती होती है तो हम कहते हैं coincidence है, और 3 बार गलती होती है तो हम कहते हैं habit है. You're getting my point? So, अगर हमारा वैल्यू एट रिस्क मॉडल बार बार हमें गलत नंबर दे रहा है, दैट मीन्स कि मॉडल में ही कोई गड़बड़ है. You're getting my point? ठीक है? So that has been given by Basel Committee. Basel Committee says कि अगर बार बार गड़बड़ हो रही है तो मॉडल चेक कर लीजिए. ठीक है? So we would be discussing with the board